we go. At some point in the next second or so, we should be live. And we are live. Hey, everyone. Thanks for your patience and getting started. Welcome, welcome to another exciting conversation, another wonderful discussion where we deep dive into all sorts of wonderful topics as we remember who we truly are and what we're here to do, which is not to just get a job and slave away every day and do the mundane robotic repeating sort of samsaric methods. We're here to express and we're here to expand. So I'm hoping I know this conversation will be one for the expansion, and I'm very excited to jump into this. So today we're going to be talking about the Kundalini awakening. So we often talk about Kundalini, and no, it's not a type of pasta, as some have joked about before. This is a wonderful energetic process within that we get to tap into, and it's really tapping us into our true self. So we are not this physical body. We are the energy that's inhabiting this physical space for a time being. So Kundalini is just that. It's a bridge between the physical and the metaphysical realm. So it is that true. We talk about the Christic seed within the Kundalini is that energetic representation of that Christic seed. So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation, and I'm so thrilled and honored to be joined by my brother Kamananda, Tim, who's going to join us here today and dive us through this discussion and bring us into what brought him into this space, how he came to find more about this Kundalini energy and where it's led him in this process. So thank you for being here, brother. We really appreciate you for showing up today and for sharing your gnosis with us.
Um, Thank you so much, and pleasure to share with you and your audience, and about my favorite topic. And yeah, to kick off, I'll kind of just weave the personal and the metaphysical and the mystical all together. Um, and so I started off. I was just sharing with Justin before we started the live stream. I was always the black sheep of the family, so I come from a family of scholars and academics, and half Jewish, half German, and on the mom's side, rabbinical scholars. On the dad's side, Herr Doctor Professor in Germany, like the revered professor. And all my siblings are pretty much in that same stream. Also, a very kind of, we can say, like left-wing family. Not communist or anything like that, but I grew up in the Upper West Side of New York, which was quite left-wing. And all the academics were left-wing, and everyone, there were no dissenting voices around me at a political level, at a health level, like no dissenting voices about anything. It was just like you go to school, exactly like your introduction. And then I was expected to be a genius at school, and I was expected to excel in the kind of studies my family did. Um, I went to Hebrew school, and I also went to church. And sometimes I was in all Christian schools, like the church, the day school of the Church of the Heavenly Rest, where I was the only Jewish kid. Why my parents thought that would be a good idea, I don't know. And other times I was in a Jewish school, it was called Birchwath, and so I was the only Christian kid. You see, like, so I was never um, fitting in to the milieu of where I was. And when I was in Hebrew school, I was so bored, and it seemed more about like no one was interested in what actually the rabbi was saying. They were interested in hanging out with each other. It was a time for the culture to, so these were extremely secular Jews. And so they weren't really about the religion or about what was being conveyed. So neither was I, but I just saw that they were being rude. Like, why are they talking when the rabbi is speaking? I'm trying to hear what's going on, man. Why are we here? And I really enjoyed the night mass. That was one thing I went to on my own in New York. There's a beautiful cathedral on the upper I used to go there for that mass and that religious friends, hardcore Catholic, and I was always asking why, driving my parents and my teachers absolutely insane. My nevertheless, I've got to be important paradigm. So even though I saw it wasn't exactly in my father's footsteps or my grandfather's footsteps, that and I became for the Upper West Side quite right wing, because not so much like more in oppositional to the dominant collective milieu than so much like my own philosophical thing that came later. So first I was like, all these people think the same, they must be wrong. So that was my position, and it was always my position. So I was consistently the skunk at the garden party, and arguing with all my relatives, and people would say some crazy stuff at dinner, and I would immediately call them out on it. And actually, my father encouraged me, so that was nice. My mother sometimes said, "Children are better seen than heard." And so that was it growing up, and that manifested through a lot of like we can say well-known institutions. And I wound up at age, I don't know, 30 in the hedge fund world. So I read George Soros's book, Soros on Soros, and for whatever else he's done since then. Back then, we didn't know, but in trading, he was a genius, clearly. And I looked how we apply macroeconomic trends into markets, and I said, that's what I want to do too. So thus began a 15-year career, more 20-year career in hedge funds. So I was just extremely trading, being a portfolio manager trader at a hedge fund, global macro, which is, you know, Turkish bonds, Russian ruble, US stocks, you can trade anything. So you have 6 to 8 screens on your desk and it's 24 hours. So you can imagine my mind, I loved it. That's the way my mind works. And, but I was constantly in need of like a decompression. And I found yoga. So I started going to yoga, Ashtanga, and I loved it. So I was going 6 days a week for Ashtanga. That's the like practice, you know, when you're a hardcore Ashtangi. And I was also going to the Rush sauna on East 10th Street at night, the banya, which is extreme heat. So, and I started eating raw foods. So next to the banya on East 10th Street was a place called Quintessence, it's all Manhattan. And they had incredible raw food. And I was reading all their raw food literature when I would have dinner alone because no one wanted to go there with me. And I was like, wow, after 6 months, something big was happening. Like, I didn't do it for purification. I had no, you know, it was just, that's where it kind of led me. And I started regenerating and looking much younger. People were shocked that I wasn't 20 and now I was 32 or 33 or something like that. And then I was living long periods on liquids because I was like, oh, how far can I take this? And I was doing Ashtanga and basically living on electrolyte lemonade and red pepper raw gazpacho. I would get like a couple of gallons made and bring it to work and just drink that all day long. And I was going for months like that. And I felt great. Um, and then, you know, things happened. I moved to London. I got a great job offer there. There was no, the Ashtanga was like 45 minutes away by taxi. Back then, the pound to the dollar rate was like 2 to 1. So it literally like costing me like $45 just to get to the Ashtanga class. Taking the tube was not possible. It would even take like so much longer. And so I stopped going to Ashtanga. Couldn't find there was no raw food restaurants in London in 2005, maybe one somewhere far away. So it was just eating salad bar, but it was hard to find a salad bar also. So pretty soon I was sliding back into like healthy chicken wrap and all that stuff. And to relieve the stress, which I was still having, I discovered Ibiza. So London and Ibiza so close together, and the flights were super cheap. So that was the beginning of EasyJet, Ryanair, all that stuff. So you could just hop on a flight for like cheaper than going to the yoga class and wind up in a great rave in Ibiza in 2005, 2.5 hours later. And I was like, great, I'm sold. And it just dancing all weekend. So work all week, trading, stocks, bonds, currencies, everything. Jump on a plane Friday afternoon, Ibiza, come back, do it again. And I was traveling the whole world like that also. I was traveling to Brazil, to Russia, to Ukraine, all over Eastern Europe. Anywhere where I had a confluence of like interests that also went with the trading. I was going to IMF meetings. I spoke at an IMF gathering. I speak at JP Morgan conferences, Goldman Sachs conferences. So funny enough, when I spoke at conferences, the thing I was speaking about, I would become too attached to. It would usually mess up my trading. So I started to stop speaking at conferences because it was too like ego enhancing. So I read all the yoga books, like I was an avid reader. Now I can't read anything. I'm not, it just is what it is. I'm not proud of it, but it's very hard to read. I would read everything about yoga philosophy, everything. I was super interested, but yoga was only now philosophical and material in terms of like Ashtanga or Yin. I tried Hatha yoga, Yin yoga, Kundalini yoga. Nevertheless, with all this traveling and 6 screens and not so healthy diet, I burned out. And Ibiza, put that all together, and I became very sick, super sick, like migraines, uh, just feeling awful, and head fog, terrible, nothing. And so now I found myself, on a sabbatical from work, and I went to India to do a panchakarma, and I wound up doing a 60-day panchakarma, and living next to a temple and in this authentic Ayurveda kind of off-grid place. And just seeing how deep the pain went in the body. And it was great. I love all the oils and all the treatments, but it was not good for my digestion. The magic kitchery was not treating me so magically. And when I got home, I was even more sick. Like I had a huge, I broke out in shingles. I had like migraine. I thought my head was being split with an axe, really bad. And so this kind of like toxicity, I knew I got to get back to the way I was when I was on doing Ashtanga and raw foods and liquids and the banya. That worked. It'll work again. I got to get back to that. So I went on a 90-day. I was like, let me do a 30-day juice fast. People do 30 days, right? And then right before I started, I saw that people I said, what's the longest people do? Oh, 90 days. At the time, that was what I could find on Google. Okay, I'll do that. So the first 45 days were just feeling physically more better and better. I was able to go running in the morning and go to the gym in the afternoon just on juices. I was pretty surprised. Like as long as I did body weight stuff, my body was recovering no problem. But the minute I tried to like lift weight, then the juice fast wasn't supporting that at the time. So I didn't. I just did body weight stuff and went running and felt great and I had so much energy. But nothing mystical had happened yet. So it was like 45 days. And I said, I'll go to Tulum. That's a better portal than Ibiza. I'll go there and spend the rest of the time on beach for the next 45 days. So I was living on a beach. By now I was doing Oran, only Oran, and then coconuts and water sometimes. I was having these incredible experiences. Like one experience, I decided to dry fast after Oran. And I was already walking like 3 hours a day on the beach. Tulum back then was an incredible walking beach. Maybe still is. I haven't been back in a long time. And so I'd wake up in the morning at about 3:30, meditate, do my Kundalini yoga practice, Yogi Bhajan Kundalini yoga, and then I would go for a long walk. And I would walk back, finish my practice. So that was about 5 hours or 6 hours every day, starting at about 3 in the morning. And on the dry fast, I was like, okay, take it easy, don't push yourself. I found myself sprinting on the beach. The body wanted to sprint. And when my mouth got dry, I would go in the ocean and the dry mouth went away and I was able to go sprinting again. And my mind was telling me the whole way, don't do this, you're going to dehydrate. It's not good, you're not eating anything, what are you doing? But the body wants to sprint, yeah. So I just kept doing it. I was hanging out with some friends and I started hearing like kirtan in the next hotel over. And they said, bro, you're tripping. There's no kirtan, it's 11 a.m. And I said, come on, maybe it's a workshop or something. They said, do we hear nothing? And I said, I'm going to go check it out myself. Sure enough, nothing there, but I'm still hearing the kirtan. So it was like a celestial or an astral kirtan. I was like, wow, I've never had like an mystical auditory experience before. And then I would shut my eyes to meditate, and I would start seeing like crystal pyramid or crystal Sri Yantra. Not after like an hour, I mean like within seconds of closing my eyes. Well, now all I wanted to do was meditate because it's so cool. And now we're about 85 days, 86 days into the juice fast. And I'm still seeing these crystal pyramids all the time. And my friend says, oh, we're having some people over later, a little soiree on the beach when you fly. I said, okay, cool. And I'm there and I hear someone talking about pyramids in the back. And in Tulum, they're the Mayan pyramids. So I say, what pyramids are you referring? And they said, this chocolate mushroom pyramid. So I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, this person made the chocolate mushroom into a Mayan pyramid and it's been charged on a Tesla coil. And so they said, do you want one? Now, 88 days juices or something like that. Not even, like coconut water, dry fast together. And I'm looking at this mushroom. Does the universe want me to break my 88-day juice fast on the mushroom? That's just stupid. And my friend, who's never done a mushroom in her life or any substance, said, should I do the other half with you? And I was like, I can't tell you what, yes. So we split it. Within 10 minutes, she threw off all her clothes and sprinted naked down the beach, screaming in joy. I was like, oh boy. And I sat there and some good music playing. And I was like, I feel groovy, like sensual, snake-like groovy. And it was like the first Kundalini experience brought to you by this wonderful pyramid. And well, I was hooked on those. So I was like, how often can I do these without like injuring myself? So every 3-4 days, I would take another one. I was still fasting on juice. And then like I wanted my system to be open as possible to take another. And I could do like there was Sanskrit on my friend's wall. And I said, I'm going to try to read that. And I read it. I don't know Sanskrit. And he said, yeah, that's correct. So I was like, huh, I'm tapping into some kind of like universal knowledge on this mushroom. And I had done mushrooms before, but the Tesla coil was the X factor as far as I'm concerned. Like the Tesla energy, or you were discussing orgone energy. It's also the Shakti. It's just yeah, I am electricity, Shakti said. So it's like the mushroom is the perfect carrier, the spore. Like, where did mushrooms come from anyway? Was it a meteor? There's a whole thing about that. There's a whole thing about Christ in mushrooms, I'm sure you know. So anyway, it was like this mushroom is like opening up higher centers of awareness for me. So I was doing it quite often. then my liver felt so toxic. Oh, I need to take a break. I moved it to new moons and full moons only. And the woman who was making them would even find me when I was trying to stop and say, I'm here, it's a new moon. Okay. And yeah, I felt more me than on these mushrooms. Like it was my favorite thing ever. And kind of all month, all 2 weeks prep for that. A couple of days recovery, 2 weeks prep. Again, it was really centered around that, living in the beach in Tulum. And one day on the mushroom, I was in the yoga shala and I felt this energy building in my root chakra and then gushing up all the way up my spine and shooting out my hair. I could feel like, yogis like to keep their hair long, and they like the Native Americans and all that. So it was true. I could feel the nerve endings at the end of my hair, like alive with electricity. And the next 8 hours, maybe longer, I was having this Kundalini experience where mantra, jazz fusion, like Sun Ra. I don't know if you know Sun Ra, but check it out if you don't. So Sun Ra jazz fusion. He was a trippy dude. And mantra and techno and shamanic beats all going in my head at the same time. So the auditory experience was like I was listening to it like the headphones, but mystical headphones. And the body just wanted to move and dance and be free. So the body was half like I had never felt this, something was moving me versus my willpower. So now something was moving me and my willpower was trying to surrender into that and coming up with good ideas, and then that would interfere with the flow, and then relaxing into it again and just trying to tap into that flow again and again. That basically became my whole practice for the last decade plus. So I and I felt so much joy and love. And in between the dancing, the Kundalini would put me into various asanas, but asanas I don't know and aren't in the books. So like the Kundalini can express as asana, and in so many ways we don't know about. Everyone's getting the perfect medicine when that happens. Like imagine you had the genius enlightened hatha yoga teacher inside your body as Kundalini, giving you the perfect mudra, mantra, and asana, and pranayama, all, and auditory, like all that going on, just downloaded. So that's what Maha Kundalini Yoga is. It's exactly that. It's the fusion of all yogas as a mystical communion. And it can happen once or it can happen as an ongoing 24/7 thing. And so after 8 hours, I was just threw myself in a pranam. I had never done a pranam before. Where in Indian culture, they lay totally prostrate, and just thanking the Divine Mother. I knew it was Kundalini is gendered as a Divine Mother, and I threw myself, thanking her, tears in my eyes, crying, wailing, thank you, 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 thank you. And I couldn't even tell afterwards like what it had. People are like, oh, I couldn't speak. All I could do was hug. I felt with I never had so much love in my life. Like I just felt like I was a bundle of love, and it was better to communicate through hugs. And it was the me I always knew was in there, but was like Gulliver in Gulliver's Travels, like strapped down by everything, traumas, beliefs, patterning, cultural times, whatever. But now it was like, I'm myself, I'm joy, I'm love. So, some paths of yoga are not about joy and love per se. They're about I am the self, or transcendence, or the void. Well, over here, it's not like that. It's joy and love. So I guess that makes me like a bhakta. That's a devotional path. people who are more emotionally set up, or also in Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, they say that Bhakti Yoga is the more accessible path, whereas something like Advaita Vedanta, which is more the yoga of the mind, is something for the higher yugas, and it's not many people can access that Kali Yuga. So anyway, I'm an emotional person, so it's perfect for me. And well, now I'm super hooked, right? This is the best thing ever. It's exactly what I've been looking for. Like I couldn't even imagine that this is it. When's the next new moon or full moon where I can do a mushroom and, do it again? And so that became my practice for like 2 years. And I would go to like power spots with the mushrooms. Like I would go to Sedona with the mushrooms, like, all the good vortexes here, and plus this. And like, so I would hike the vortexes all day long and then have a ceremony somewhere by myself and that kind of thing. And then one day I went to Joshua Tree and with the same intention, and the mushroom really brought me down. I felt like, when will it stop? Like I was back on the raw foods. So it's like, if I ate pasta, now would be the time to eat pasta, because I really need to come down from this thing. I'd never want to do it again. And I never did it again. It was just, the time was up. And I'd done a 21-day water fast in True North in Northern California. And I thought it was best to lock myself away so I don't cheat and break my fast early. On day 12 or something, I felt great during the whole water fast. I'm just about to do another coming up. On day 12 or something, I noticed on Facebook events that there was a guy nearby doing a workshop called Connection to Source. And I looked on YouTube, and he was doing this transmission of Kundalini energy, although he wasn't calling it that. He said connecting to Source. And I looked where it was, and it was like 40 minutes away from me. And I got permission to sneak out of the clinic. And I went there, and I saw 12, 14 people all going through an incredible Kundalini experience. I wasn't feeling much. I asked the guy, "Can you zap me again?" And he's like, "It doesn't really work that way, but sure." But I knew the guy was real. And I had heard of shaktipat before, which is this mystical transmission of Kundalini energy through intention, through surrender, or just presence with someone who's been a vehicle for that, because grace decides they're a vehicle for that. So this was the real deal. Was the first person like that I came into human contact with. I'd read about it. Now I met the person. He was very, not in any tradition, and Persian, and he was not getting you to buy some big philosophy. And he would do most of his transmission through a hug, like Amma style. That's what Amma is allegedly doing. That hug is shaktipat. And whether someone feels it or not, it's a different story. But it's another form of shaktipat. She's that love, that what she's doing is shaktipat. And sometimes they bop you on the head with peacock feathers, and other times they hug you. And everyone has their own divine method of doing that. So I went on a retreat with this guy, my first spiritual retreat, alone. Before I would have said, "Oh, I need a friend to go with me," or something, a spiritual retreat. I don't know, I'll feel weird. Who are these people? I don't know anyone there. And it was in Iceland, and the guy was bringing us to geysers and to, like, that's Kundalini, the Kundalini energy. And the world's largest waterfall, or second largest waterfall, the Kundalini energy was so strong on this waterfall that the minute I stepped out of the tour bus, I was shaking like a leaf. The waterfall itself was like 500 meters away. But just the energy of it, I had to go back into the tour bus and wait for about 45 minutes before I could venture out again. Like, it was so strong. In about day 5 or 6 of the retreat, he was talking about something. I was closing my eyes. I wasn't really listening to his words anymore. I could feel this tingling in my body, and it hasn't stopped 10 years later. It's like 10-volt electric shock going through all the time. But if I focus on it, it can become much stronger. But it's always present. I don't notice it. But now, just sharing with you, I notice it again. But if I meditate on it, then it becomes really strong. Or if I'm holding hands with someone, maybe they'll notice that, wow, pretty electric. So that's also a manifestation of the Kundalini energy. Now my throat chakra started to open, and I was listening to his transmissions back in Ibiza, and I would start toning. So first the toning was all spontaneously. So first the toning was like just like a but later was like or not yet, just like I'm humming. And my voice has changed a lot. So even when I try to make it like the way it was in the beginning, I can't. It still sounds pretty good now. So something started to happen in the voice. One day in Kundalini yoga class, I was doing some whatever, I don't know. And there was a pop in my throat, like a physical, energetic, and for me, auditory pop. And out came light. So I just started like, I was shocked. And it was speaking on its own, again, without my willpower. And I was like, and everyone was looking at me, and I was like, oh, I got to leave the year. And I went outside, and I was like, what's happening? So that was the day my throat chakra opened. And I love how there was like, it was so organic, everything, all the alchemy just happening in the divine timing, the universe, divine mother delivering, the Kundalini yoga class, which was actually, that was near my last Kundalini yoga class. But what I discovered after my throat chakra opened was that if I tried to manipulate energy in my body through power, it felt awful. So I went to a Kundalini yoga class, the same teacher I always go to, and I was like an assistant teacher. And my Kundalini became so disturbed after his class. Like, it was the first time I felt unsafe. The first and only time. And that was from the pressure I was putting it under with this like willful manipulation through the Kundalini yoga willful kriyas. Confusingly, in shaktipat, we call that kriya also, but it's spontaneous. That's the difference. The Kundalini yoga, yogi bhajan, and kriya yoga, it's a kriya you do. And in Maha Kundalini yoga, it's the kriya that does you. That's the difference. So I had to drop Kundalini yoga, boom, no longer. And but what's happening like now with the language, I can notice that it has like a Sanskrit vibe, many Sanskrit words in what comes through. And I'm starting to om, and I feel Divine Mother's presence. And the man who I was connecting with before, his name's Abdi, it's not so yogic. It's kind of non-denominational, let's say. And I felt what's happening organically in me is more yogic. Maybe I can find a more kind of yoga shaktipat rather than this one. So I found another teacher online, and I went to a retreat in Sedona. First day I felt nothing, but again, like 40 people having the most incredible experiences. Like, it was like the best. I'd been to a lot of raves. This was the best rave I've ever been to. Like the choir of the Holy Spirit. This one's dancing. This one's singing like an opera, like opera quality singing. This one's having a trauma release. This one's speaking in tongues. This one's a bear. There's a woman in the back who's making cuckoo noises, like she's a cuckoo bird. Every meditation, she's a cuckoo bird. And if you look in the throat chakra in some depictions, one of the animals is a cuckoo bird. It was her throat chakra opening. So it's so wonderful to have these things like you read about, and then like there's the manifestation, yeah, right there, like wow. And instead of thinking, oh, maybe she was a cuckoo in a past life, that's what I was thinking. But my friend said, no, it's the cuckoo bird and the throat chakra. Makes sense, huh? Like the bird's first language, So I was like, wow, I'm so all in on this. It's the best thing ever. So the next day, just to make sure, now I had no more mushrooms, but I had cacao. So I brought in some cacao. And all of a sudden, during the meditation, my belly started to independently, without my willpower, do pranayama, like a 3-part yogic breath. So I had this like experiences before where I'm not the doer, it's the grace, it's the Holy Spirit, it's the Kundalini moving me. But this one was very strong and seemingly a break from all the other ones, because the level of like power and the level of interference were totally different. So I could not interfere. I couldn't interfere. I couldn't stand up and walk away. I had willpower, but it was just happening, and it was just completely independent. And I would have this 3-part yoga breath, and then Om would start coming up from the base, out of my mouth, out of my throat, and this deep baritone Om, like earth trembling Om, and it would go on all meditation long Om, and the next day a little higher octave. By the 7th day, my voice was breaking because the octave was so high. So I realized then it opened all my chakras. It took me some time to realize like what had happened there. Like, oh, each octave oming, like, yeah. My view is chakras are opening and closing all the time, but there is a point where you go from like normal everyday chakras to like a mystical opening, and it all happened for me in a week on that retreat. Grace, yeah. So one day I was meditating on the retreat by myself. I was in a cabin in the woods in Sedona, and I was sitting on my porch, and someone walked by. I couldn't see with my eyes closed, but someone was walking by and started shouting at me, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but look up." And there were 3 eagles circling over my head. So it was so blatantly obvious that this man had to interrupt me from meditating, a stranger, to tell me to look up to see what was going on. I was like, wow. I mean, well, I was meditating nonetheless. So I started to really see like, wow, the whole universe is aligning in an interior, exterior, something really profound is happening. So that became the new baseline. Now I was hooked on this new group, going to the retreats all the time, getting to know the whole Sangha, all that. And some things started to manifest, like my advice to people, if they get involved in spiritual groups or gurus or things like that, I think it's fine. You're your inner guru. They're an inner guru, but it's not your ego. So as long as you are in ego consciousness, it's okay to have an external guru. But the minute you start smelling something foul, or go in with like some discernment, a lot of discernment, and the minute you sniff some inauthenticity or some problems, if you can hang on to get what's good and leave what's bad, but if you can't anymore, get out. Don't. There's no loyalty. There's no, like no. The minute it turns sour, you got to go. So this experience with this second teacher started to turn a little sour. Something didn't smell right. So I was like, I want to really mainline this Kundalini. So I want to drop the middleman. The shaktipat is great. I think it's the better than anything I tried, whether it was plant medicine, cold bath, sauna, fasting, raw foods, yoga, qigong, dark rooms. It did it all. Shaktipat to me is the most powerful, the most effective. You have to be aligned for it. And it's not for everyone's. It's next level stuff, completely next level. So, yogis of old, what do they do? That the Ganga runs from, and I'll fast, and I'll meditate by the Ganga, and I'll bathe in the Ganga twice a day, like the yogis did. Must be something to it if they're doing that. The mystical power of the Ganga, being at the foot of the Himalayas. I'll go meditate in temples. I'll just go to box. There's some Shakti there. Like there's one temple called the Manasa Devi Temple in Haridwar. It's the goddess as the snake goddess. So there's got to be some good Shakti there, yeah. Shakti and Kundalini are interchangeable for me. It's that in traditional Hatha Yoga or in traditional Tantra, it's Kundalini Shakti, not just Kundalini or not just Shakti, Kundalini Shakti. But I'll just say Shakti. So got to the Manasa Devi Temple. There were like all these tour buses outside. And I said, yeah, it doesn't look like that's my day for there. And I got back to where I was staying, and the hotel manager said, why don't you try this Kali temple? It's across the river, and it's my family temple, and the tuk-tuk driver will take you there. He spoke only Hindi. I'll tell him where to go. I say, okay, cool. So we go through this like slum. I'm from New York. Slums are dangerous, but in India, not so much. So I was like, ooh, Kali temple. Now, up to this moment, it's like Kali, Krishna, Shiva, whatever. It's all same to me because I have no personal experience with it. It's just stories I've read or pictures I've looked at, but it's not like I feel for one over the other. And I arrive at this Kali temple, and we're not sure, my friend and I, if we're in the right place. Everyone's speaking Hindi. There's some confusion, mostly on our parts. And a Brahmin, so they're all dressed in white, they're like a priestly class, steps out of seemingly nowhere, a Brahmin man, and he says in English, he's albino. I never saw another albino person in India all the times I've been there. And he says in English, you're in the right place. Now, there's a form of Shiva called Bholanath, and he's the most white form of Shiva, and that's because he's the most innocent form, the most innocent. Looking back on it, I wonder, that's very odd that there was a Brahmin albino speaking English telling me I was in the right place, and later I connect with that form of Shiva. I wonder. So the priest was excited to have foreigners there and took us into the womb of the temple. It was also an ashram. In this room was a yoni perpetual fire pit. So most fire pits are, circular, or they'll do that kind of metal fire pit for puja. But this was in the shape of a yoni, and it was perpetual. So the priests, as long as that temple's been there, the priests are tending to that fire. And in the wall of the room, so it's indoors, is the Das Mahavidya. So Das is 10, Mahavidya, wisdom goddesses. So they're like sub aspects of Kali, but identical to her. So Tara, who you might know from the Buddhist tradition, is from the Das Mahavidya, and the Buddhists and people who followed my mother share a Tara. There's like a Hindu Tara and a Buddhist Tara, but that's one of the origins of Tara. And there are 9 other wisdom goddesses. So they're all carved into the wall in this room in like black stone. There's a lot of soot in the room because it's interior, and the vibration, like there's a lot of condensed energy in that room. And there's a generator in the back somewhere. So there's this like, so the first time I went there, I just felt this void energy. So as I was sharing a little bit before, like I'm all about the love and joy, and I'm not so interested in the void. Like void, people meditate to get to a void. That seems very boring. So I felt this void energy for the first time spontaneously, and I wasn't so excited about it. I was like, yeah, the void, that's cool. And my friend said, I want to come back tomorrow, and I said, okay. So we came back. Now I think that was Kali's womb, and this void energy, like Kali. And say I'm now a channel of Kali. It's more than that because it's not just an auditory or vocal channeling, it's a full body transmission and a full body possession. So Kali shares that she is the primordial womb. She is the black hole of which all creation springs forth. So learning that later from her knowledge, so Vidya is knowledge, like Maha Vidya. So it's like the great knowledge. Kali Vidya is knowledge of Kali. So she's explaining her nature to me and to the people I meditate with as a channel. We call it bhava. Bhava means channeling plus embodiment, like a divine possession. So I'm sitting in this room meditating, and the first bhava transpires, which suddenly I felt so much energy in my body. It was like a nuclear reactor. I mean, I had a lot of energy in my body. As I said, I used to rave, I used to DJ, I did all the psychedelics. I've been to Burning Man 8 times. Like I had the Kundalini awakening going on for already 3-4 years. So I was kind of used to a lot of energy, but this was a whole nother deal. And my tongue flew out of my mouth and I started roaring. Callie was roaring. It wasn't, again, I'm not the doer. It's just a happening in the body. And I'm and the tongue is not only like there's very there's a deep tongue was dance photography. I never really how I understood because it's happening in my tongue, like it's lulling, but also in the tip. And this went on for about 4 or 5 hours, and it was kind of like an ayahuasca ceremony, like it's super intense, but that's what I'm here for. And so I guess that's Cali. If I wasn't in the Cali temple, I probably would have run away. Um, and I knew it was good for me. So just get exposed to this session as much as you can. And finally, after 4 hours, I was exhausted, and I went back to the hotel. And that night, I was like, wait a minute, I shifted in my reality. There's this presence here. There's, yeah, with a capital P. And I was sending an email, like a messaging email, where I had to sever contact with someone. And the minute I pushed send, my tongue flew out of my mouth again, just like in the temple. And I realized, oh my goddess, Callie's here. Like it seems to be 24/7 here. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't come and go. It's like in the field and in my body. It's like always present. And that was in 2016. So that's a good place to pause the story and see if any questions arise about all that. Maybe I'll get another cacao. Excuse me. Can I have another one?
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was a riveting timeline to follow, and just beautiful to hear someone who has embarked on this exploratory experiential learning process so deeply, because that's truly where we gain knowledge, is that firsthand experience. So just want to commend you and thank you and bow in gratitude for you for taking that venture and for bringing us along in that, because it's so valuable to have that. Yeah, so as far as questions or to dive in deeper, I mean, there's a lot we can unpack in that. Just I guess, so you mentioned this sort of consistent electrical energy that you feel pulsing throughout you. Is that something where you like do you cultivate that practice to accentuate that on a regular basis, or is that something that's more just a byproduct of where you are now?
So it's hard to me to give. I don't want to give like this is the way it is kind of answers, because
Sure.
there's so many independent variables, and there's my process and the process of people who I help guide. So that's what I have as my reference point. Obviously, I'm going to be strongest on my process. So that electrical charge uh, came through later as an explanation in a mystical transmission from Kali, where she said, "I am liquid light." So the like some people say like struck by lightning, or this like liquid light, lightning, like water and fire element combined. Bruce Lee, be like water, my friend, coupled with lightning. So there's definitely this like electrical, the Tesla, the orgon. There's the I am the light, So this is one of the manifestations of that.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah, and then one thing that I've loved about I've explored your content just a little bit, and I've really loved how you've spoken about it in this relay as well, just this encouragement of that divine movement, however it shows, and truly just allowing that energy to flow through you and not being concerned about how it appears or where it's guiding you or what the sort of dogma or stigmatism or whatever sort of. So I'm wondering if you could maybe share a little bit more about how that experience has merged into your practice, or maybe expand a little bit on that topic itself.
So that's a great question, because that's one of the reasons why the shaktipat or maha kundalini path, also called Siddha Yoga, also called Maha Siddha Yoga, uh, that people get turned off by it because of the kriyas. So the most important thing on the path is to let the Kundalini manifest however it wants in your body and in your field, when it wants, how it wants. That manifestation of the Kundalini is the way, according to this school of yoga, the patterns called samskara or vritti, uh, the whirlpool of the mind, the patterns, the impressions of the past life, and all that get unspooled, because the ego itself can't do it, because it's a product of that. So you can't use the ego to like unspool all your patterning, because let's say you think I'm a people pleaser. So now like I'm speaking my truth. That you've just taken on another pattern. You've suppressed one pattern and you've consciously or semi-consciously adopted another pattern. Now you've got two patterns, one you've suppressed and one you've just adopted, and you're still in the hall of mirrors. So those expressions of Kundalini, the kriyas, the mudras, the mantras, the chanting, the body movement, the asanas, the pranayama, are the key to the whole Maha Kundalini yoga. So if you try to suppress those or manipulate it to something more like user friendly or environment friendly, uh, you're not only shooting yourself in the foot, you're potentially distorting a distortion. You have to really like, of course, it's not so strict like that, like, oh, one little distortion and you blew your whole path of yoga. It's more like a constant invitation to surrender into the divine, and that through trial and error and through experience, that it knows what's best, actually, obviously. Your ego doesn't know what's best. Your ego is like a mouse compared to an ocean, and it's just uh, uh, highly delusional. So this is the perfect yoga for you. And sometimes it manifests as crying my eyes out in the middle of San Francisco airport. Like I just feel something heavy in my chest. I just have to sit down somewhere near the Starbucks, and I'm just bawling for no reason, like bawling. And after 15 minutes, like, oh, it's just like a wind past storm. And what if I said, oh, I just can't, and this is an airport, and there's a Starbucks. Uh, I'll suppress it, or I'll wait till I get off the plane, or no, I just gotta. It's so obvious, that you gotta do that. But to the other people, those who aren't having those experiences know nothing about that. And what I've learned is the more ego consciousness they are, the more they come in contact with that, you could say, wild aspect of consciousness and what embodied aspect of consciousness, the more tricky they get. So some people, when they're in contact with that, I live in Ubud in Bali, and there are a lot of people with awake Kundalinis here. So it's more socially acceptable in a lot of places. But to the point where they're screaming and yelling at you, new agey kind of like static dance environment, people wouldn't bother you. But if it's happening in the yoga class, and you even go to the back and try to, or step outside the class or something, people feel energetically disturbed. They tell you to stop, and what are you doing? You're being disrespectful, and so it's a constant invitation to understand the space you're in and honor it, but more importantly, honor what's coming through you. And you could even ask the yoga teacher, is it okay if I practice towards the back? And if something comes on, or this is not a class for me. So I don't take public class any time where I was. That's the kind of thing I would know the teacher and it would be okay. For the class, but then when something comes on, I follow that. So that's what I learned over all these years is like the first priority is to surrender to the manifestation of the Kundalini, Shakti of the goddess, and then I'm triggering too many people. You know, maybe they need to see it also. Like, who am I to say? So there's an interesting story. It's holy city in India, and there's a wonderful Durga temple. Durga is another manifestation of Divine Mother. So I was in the Durga temple in Varanasi on Navratri, which is the most sacred time of the year for people who follow the goddess in India in October. And sometimes at these Devi is like it's not un. So a woman suddenly, Indian woman, suddenly starts swaying violently. Her head starts spinning. Her hair becomes loose, and her tongue may come out, or she might look like a warrior. And they test her to make sure it's real. And then the mother drum comes out, and there's a parade because Durga has just embodied there at the temple. And it's a well-known phenomenon in India. That's Baba. In the West, we don't know about that so much. It's more South India and East India rather than North and West India. So yeah, it's not so common to know about that. So anyway, there I was. It's never happened to me transpossession. So the Baba I experience is I'm completely conscious during the whole thing. It's a fusion of, let's say, my ego consciousness and the divine consciousness. So I'm a lot of different vantage points at once, which manifest as the I am presence. So I am means I am everything and everyone. All this I am. So instead of transcending, I am the world, I am the universe, I am the gods and goddess, all that, and then a particular form might manifest in my body, and but never in trance. And in this time, my head started swaying, spinning, my whole body felt myself losing consciousness. I've never been in a trance before. I've never lost consciousness before. Never. In deep sleep, but otherwise never. And I was there alone at the temple, and I just was like, I'm not ready for this. And so like the manifestations can be so strong, even after all these years for me, that I can be like, okay, I honor, but it's a temple, it's what, but I don't feel safe here. I'm a Western guy, not an Indian woman. I have no one's here with me. What will happen? I've never been in a trance before. What if, they arrest me? I don't know what's going to happen. I was like, if it's meant to happen, I think Mother will give me some slack, and it can happen another time. I'll come back with reinforcements. So to answer your question, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, and for many people, that will get them to not be interested in the path or to stop the path or whatever. But for the really yeah, you want to go deep. That's where you have to go, and it's thy will and not my will. That's the experience. You have it again and again and again and again and again.
Beautiful. Hey, give me just 1 second here. I'm gonna try something because I think we're having a little bit of connection issues just from some feedback, folks. So
I'm
give me
losing
just
your audio a little.
yeah, give me just a few seconds. I'll be right back. Okay. Hopefully that helps just a
No, I
little
can.
bit.
Yeah, it does.
So thank you for that. And it is a certain interesting balance to have to use because I mean, if we're not too careful, and this is happened in the not too recent history where people were institutionalized and even killed for displaying, these bouts of having that divine intervention. And it doesn't take too much digging to look into the psych wards that were repurposed from ancient structures to basically kill off people who displayed any sort of divine intervention. But of course, they labeled it all sorts of diseases and mental illness and all sorts of things. And so it is something that we have to, do exercise with great care. And it is unfortunate that it is not. But we're moving through that. We're moving through this time where it has been so restricted back into this space where it will be. And like you said, it is sort of the egoic response that,
I lost the audio again.
oh, the audio is not coming through.
I got
Um,
unfortunate.
yeah, it's unfortunate that this is the time where that egoic response is sort of limiting of that authentic divine expression from moving through. No, you're not getting anything.
No audio.
All right. That's a shame. Maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Yeah, the chat saying they can hear me. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. Yeah, chat saying I'm coming through. Not sure if are you hearing me now? Nothing? Okay. Yeah, thanks for the feedback in the chat, guys.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me. So maybe I'll continue with my story while you sort out your audio so we don't lose it. But yeah, so just riffing off the last thing I heard you say. Um, exactly. So if you look back at, look at Christianity, like it's all about the Holy Spirit, actually. Like Jesus was already a high initiate. But when he got baptized by John in the River Jordan under the sanctity of the Holy Spirit is when he became enlightened or, embodied his divine mission, or, it took the 30 years and then the 3-year ministry began with John's baptism, fire and water. So it's now in Christianity, like there's one Jesus, yeah, everyone else no. And manifestations of the Holy Spirit, you'll only really find that in like Pentecostal and like charismatic traditions now. So the Holy Spirit, the manifestations of the Holy Spirit have been driven out of mainstream Christianity. And but for someone who has an active Kundalini, if you look at what's happening in the Pentecostal and charismatic church, so clearly Shakti, and Shakti is such a genius because it takes on a Christian flavor in the Christian church. So the way the Holy Spirit manifests in Christianity has a certain flavor, but the way it manifests in India and Hinduism, it's a different flavor. And the way it manifests in Buddhism, but it's the same spirit. It's culturally, it's quite fun that it does that. So the Quakers were a sect of Protestants in England who were instrumental in the founding of Pennsylvania in the US. So they were under persecution in England. England can slide into persecution at any time, it seems. And they left. George Fox was the progenitor of the Quakers. And they moved to America, to the New World, and they set up camp in Pennsylvania. And they were really outcasts, because they were having this manifestation of the Holy Spirit. And in Catholicism, it's one thing, but in Protestantism, it was really like, no go. And they, at Quaker meeting, it wasn't always silent meeting. I went to a Quaker school for a couple of years, and they have silent meeting. So it wasn't silent meeting. It was the manifestation of the Holy Spirit in the meeting. So everyone was quaking. That's why it's the Quakers. So they were shaking. And later the Shakers were a splinter of the Quakers, another American Protestant sect. So these the Quakers went from this rebellious kind of like outlaw to the dominant structure in Pennsylvania, the governor, the senator, everyone was Quaker because the whole state was Quaker. And that's when it became silent meeting because it was too wild, too much. Who are these people? Like, how could this low class person exhibit quaking and me, a senator, I don't have quaking? And it became silent meeting. So you'll often notice that enforced silence is a way of suppressing spirit. And even a silence in terms of like, oh, Ramana Maharishi silence or Advaita Vedanta silence. Silence arises naturally through the yogic process when Kundalini enters the heart and enters the mind. So you cannot enforce silence. That's a suppression. So especially when Kundalini is active, like you're on an airplane, of course it's silent or whatever. But when your Kundalini, like to suppress it with silence is like, in my world, one of the worst things you can do. So I don't go to silent retreat anymore, things like that. I don't recommend it for people who awake Kundalini. So yeah, it's a big thing about what's going to happen to you if you start exhibiting the signs of divinity, of Kundalini, of Shakti, of the Holy Spirit manifesting in you, and will you be safe? It's almost primordial or cultural or historical or collective, this feeling. On the other hand, we are going through a period of mass awakening. You can look at it from many, many different levels, pretty clear. So what is your duty, not only to yourself, but what is your duty to the God? The goddess knows best. And so maybe if one person is triggered by your manifestations, maybe their Kundalini will awaken in 3 days because their level of triggering was so high. And that was the catalyst for their awakening. So you shouldn't have your manifestations, like even if someone's triggered, you see, like it's, of course, at a human level, you're like, oh, I don't want to bother anyone, but if it's happening, it must be divine timing and divine reasons that I can't comprehend. So that's the dance. Yeah, that's the dance.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
How's
It
your
truly
audio
is.
doing?
Does that seem to be coming through better for you?
Nope, still no.
So I will relay in the
No.
chat for, let me
If you
just
like, I
see.
can go into the second half of my awakening story, and then maybe we can reconnect with questions when you're in a different location or something like that.
Okay, sure.
Or maybe in the chat we get to question and answer. Yes. So there I am in the Kali temple. Kali's entered the body. Now I go back to the hotel. She's still there. Well, what do I do? What is this? I didn't even know such thing was possible. Like, is this okay? I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign a non-disclosure or whatever, a waiver. Like, what is going on here? And I didn't even know. I couldn't find anything on the internet about it. When I got back to Ibiza, a friend told me, "Oh, that happens in Indian temples. People get like Krishna awakening or Kali awakening." I have friends that had a Krishna awakening in the temple. So just hearing that, I was like, "Oh, that's good." I tried interacting with some people in that state that was now my state, and this thing started happening with people getting triggered, especially spiritual people or like spiritual teachers. They were particularly triggered. So if I would just come across or go to a talk or something, a friend introduced me to someone or something like that, and those are the people who are acting, yeah, quite abruptly for me, just being me, the same me you're witnessing here. And I learned not to take it personally. So wow, I went to talk at a friend's house, and the person was more Advaita Vedanta, that's his school of yoga of the mind. And on the break, I asked the teacher, "Have you ever had a Kundalini experience or a Kundalini awakening?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I had it with this famous Indian guru, and I was super into it or whatever. But what I realized is it comes and goes." That's the Advaita Vedanta answer to Kundalini. So Muji will give the same answer. So it comes and it goes, so it's not real. But in the Divine Mother tradition, the world coming and going, it's all real. Everything is real. There's no duality. There's no even semi-duality. Everything is real. The world is real. It's not Maya. Maya is the goddess. This is the goddess. Coming and going, that's the way the goddess is. Like a woman, they come and go, or cats, they come and go. So it doesn't make it unreal. It just has it's a movement rather than a stasis. So Shiva, we could say, is the static ground of being or bliss. And then the movement is the Shakti. So when most teachers talk about that, especially me or by that, it's suppression of the divine feminine to be like, oh, that's not real, or ignore that, or suppress that, or it's a patriarchal suppression of the divine feminine. And you can see why that was, because it can be quite crazy, and you can understand why the Quaker elite would have that reaction and so forth. And if you've seen videos of Pentecostal churches, you might have that reaction. So it's really like to deep surrender. That's the thing. It's really to deeply surrender to that manifestation. When you do that, so now I have to surrender to Kali. Day by day, week by week, something whole new is going on in my system. 2016 is like chapter 1. Now the Kali awakening in the Kali temple, chapter 2 stuff. Like beginning and end. As strong as my first Kundalini awakening, this is Kali awakening. Now when I'm called to meditate with people, they say things like, who is this black goddess dancing in my third eye? Or I have a burning in my third eye, I feel a tingling in my head. Or so I realized that I'm a vehicle for Kali to do her transmissions. That's my experience with people. Like, so it wasn't something that I decided, oh, I'm going to do this. I just got the feedback from the experience of meditating with people. And I realized that, oh, I'm transmitting. So I'm a vehicle for her transmission. There's no doership. So I'm not transmitting. It's just happening. And there's no intent on my part, except that I'm just sitting here with an open heart. So whatever needs to happen is between you and the goddess. And the goddess, you want to come, you want to go, you feel to meditate, you feel not to meditate. But whatever happens in that meditation, it's between you and the goddess, which is also you. So it's just the field becomes supercharged with the goddess energy, and whatever, and your dharma and your karma, and that moment manifests. But usually when I meditate with people, the chance of something manifesting for them, especially if they made it through the front door, is pretty high. So then I started sharing my experience with people and saying, well, they'd say, what do you do when it feels blocked here? Or what diet would support me? Or I feel the energy stuck. What can I do to move it? So I would say, this is what I do. These are my practical tips for keeping the energy flowing and keeping yourself open to that divine energy so it can work deeper and deeper and deeper into your system. What to do in the highs, what to do in the lows, what to do in the social situations, what to do with family, what to eat, what not to eat, where to go, what not to go. So I'll synthesize all that down to Shakti GPS. So you have your egoic desires, and then may you have like intuition. So there's a whole yoga of intuition, and this is the intuition, which is the intuition is pretty close to divinity, actually. And the more you align with this intuitive, even better, spontaneous divinity, the more you can see your patterning of your ego, of what you formerly saw was inspiration or intuition. Suddenly you realize it's quite mission. And so I call it, there's like egoic intuition and there's divine intuition, and they're different. And the more you dive down that rabbit hole, you'll see for yourself which is which. One feels quite dense, one feels quite light, one's against your mind, one seems to be like a eureka. Or if it's totally against your mind and you're getting such a light feeling, then you know it's your conditioning that's trying to resist. You just learn through your experience with that. So once you're in contact with, it can manifest not only as Kali, it can manifest as Durga, Krishna, but it's usually a Hindu god or goddess, but it can also be angels, Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, the Elohim, which is a collective of creator angels, other gods or goddesses. It doesn't really matter. It's all one. Literally, it's all one. So whatever is coming through is the best one at this time for you. And some people have a primary divinity that manifests through them. So for me, it's Kali. But in the I am presence, really anything can come by. And it's only been high vibe divinity. It's never been something dark or bad. And never. You know, Padmasambhava, yeah, a lot of angelic energy, and never anything that was like, oh, I don't like this. The Mayan collective was coming through for a while, like, or the Palladians sometimes, you know, the Andromedans, whatever. They've all got information to share. And as long as it feels good and loving your heart and relaxing your body and joyful, I let it fly, you know? So it's really about moving from the ego consciousness to the divine consciousness. And it's not to say the ego is bad or it needs to be snuffed out or destroyed. I have a feeling that those things make it stronger. It wants to go to war anywhere it can. So better to just say, ego, you know what would be really fun? Is if we could like have so much energy and be able to dance a lot and to be able to connect with everyone through our hearts and feel really light in the body and be more youthful and joyous. Wouldn't that be fun? And he goes like, yeah, I want that too. So it's like, this is what, you know, you didn't get me there. You got me to my death. And this Shakti is bringing us there. Don't you see that? And he goes like, yeah. So it's kind of like engaging with the ego as like an overexcited 12-year-old or something like that, you know, like not condescending, but more at that kind of like level rather than I'm going to kill you. So that's the whole path. It's like repeated exposure. It can happen in a sacred site. It can happen through the psychedelics. It can happen through meditation. It can happen through dancing. It can happen through shaktipat, through the transmission of another human being. The shaktipat can also come in a dream from another human being, like a guru who might have passed, or from a god goddess in a dream, where you have like a Kundalini awakening in the dream state, or receive divine visitation and energetic upgrade in your dream time. So it can happen lots of ways. I think the first thing is to just being aware that that's a possibility for everyone. Like that's part of our human setup. So one is accepting that, and then two is like, is that for me? Like I was in a pretty dark place, you know, like if it was possible for me, I think it's just part of the human setup that it's possible for everyone, but it maybe not be aligned for everyone. So are you aligned for that? Are you really, you know, for me, it was kind of a desperation because I was in such ill health. I realized I needed something outside my ego to heal me. And, you know, the Kundalini and the Caduceus, the medical symbol, like the prana, like that's the ultimate healing force. So if anything is going to get me out of the situation, it's got to be the Kundalini. And that was one of the reasons I was so desperate for the Kundalini is my ego, even knowing things about Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, you know, raw foods, all this stuff, I was still very, very sick. So I needed something outside my ego consciousness to start guiding me. And it has ever since. So if you're ready, you know, like I am my own guru, yes, in the I am presence. But when I am is your ego, you're not your own guru. You're your worst enemy, actually. So, and it's important to know what that is. So ideally, from my perspective and vantage point, you want the divine guru, could be Archangel, could be Kali, could be Krishna, could be the I am presence, to take up residence within your field. You could say in your third eye or the guru chakra. So, you know, in the Indian temple, you might see a statue, they call it Murti. It's not a statue, it is the god goddess. It's had the appropriate mantras, it's been bathed, it's been treated, it's been divinized. That statue or that rock or whatever is the god goddess. It's not a representation. So, and then you go to that temple and you pray to that god goddess, let's say, because I have a lawsuit. Usually it's practical reasons why people go to the temple to pray to the goddess, your health, whatever. But in this case, the Murti, the divinity, has taken up residence in the Guru chakra. So this external process has been internalized. And if you really look at like pujas and bhavans and paths of yoga, if you kind of make it a big soup and put it all together and look at like the essence, I feel that's what it is. It's like all your practices, whatever they are, whatever tradition you are to move you to I am my own guru, but that means the divinity has taken up residence in your guru's chakra and guides you internally through an interface with your intuition. So that's my path. That's what I offer people. Amazingly, I'm a vehicle for that. So if I meditate with people and we're aligned and we spend time together, that happens with them too. And just an incredible manifestation of grace that has nothing to do with my personality complex or things I did or didn't do. In fact, I once asked the Elohim, I said, I'm worried that I'm doing something wrong. And like, what if I, do something wrong and someone gets a bad reaction? Or what if, I'm lazy or I overdo it? And they told me, like, literally, you cannot mess this up because you're not the doer. They're like, there's nothing you can do to mess this up. And I was like, oh, thank God.
That's beautiful. It is. Are you able to hear me now? Am I coming through? No, nothing.
Still no audio.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so upset there's no audio because I just don't want it to be this monologue.
Uh,
It's time
can you?
for questions, and then that way we can have the chat, and I can answer some other pools. And you can write in the chat also, or should we reconnect for round two? What do you think?
Because yeah, so I know everyone can hear me in the chat.
Still can't hear a word.
I'm just trying to relate to him.
Wow, how come I can't hear you? So weird. Hold on. What if I take off my headphones? Let's try that.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is that coming through? Testing,
Oh,
testing.
that is better.
Oh, great.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, the chat was
Me.
saying the chat was saying they could hear me, but you couldn't. So I'm glad we resolved that. Beautiful.
Okay, good.
Well, that was perfect. And I loved what you touched on here of just this sort of um this possession. We choose who we are possessed by in all moments. We're always possessed. So are we being possessed by the demiurge, by the egoic desires, by the lower downward causation force leading us to death, leading us to separation, leading us to continued division? Or are we possessed by this unifying, harmonizing, playful, joyful, blissful guide, which is leading us, that's the force of love, and she's always leading us back to that unification. So we choose in every moment who we are being possessed by, but when we stay in an unconscious, unaware state of being, then naturally we become possessed by that downward causation because it's trying to stimulate us to come back through the karma to remind us to, like, hey, get off your ass and start playing this game in a real way. Like, actually step into your power, step into what you are here to do, which is to, yes, accept their free will, but then give it back. That's the gift, is we were given this beautiful.
I would say, like, if there's any free will, it's just enough to choose God.
Yes,
like you
it.
have enough free will, a little margin to choose God.
That's it. That's all will needs to be exerted for, is I will to choose that God goodness to come back to that unifying force. And each
I
and every
will to thy will.
Yes.
Or like you can face, like the angel and the devil on the shoulder. You can face the devil or you can face the angel, or you can constantly choose love. Like there are a lot of ways to say the same thing. And it's exactly that. And now think about the dominant culture. Oi, oi, oi. Like it gets worse and worse. The satanic influence is so obvious now and so prevalent. I mean, the Olympics are like a great touchstone because like that's how obvious it is. Like it's just so in your face. Or the Grammys had something like that too, where it was a full satanic act. I mean, now it's a bit passe, even if you're trying to like stay avant-garde. I mean, this is kind of long in the tooth, yeah. But it's so obvious. Like, the blind will never see. Like, that's another important thing from the Bible. Like those with eyes to see and those with ears to hear, because you can, like, tell some people like you can't lead the horse to water, and you can't dunk the head either. And some people just will not get it. Like no matter how much time you could say like, about the COVID going on. Like, it's clear this wasn't what it was sold out to be. Uh, it's all come out. Everything publicly, without going into everything that was a conspiracy that is now not a conspiracy, that has been acknowledged as fact. You see that it was obviously like like control, money, all the normal things. And then if you want to go another rabbit hole, you can go much further. But that influence, let's say that you could call it the demiurge, you could call it satanic, you can call it the ego, whatever, is so powerful. But the paradox is, just as you were explaining, the power of what they're trying, what's manifesting in that is what's causing the mass awakening. So you can see, like, from the COVID experience, like, if you told me in 2016 everything that would have happened in 2020, 21, I would have said, you're out of your mind. No way. If you go in Texas and try to lock people down, you'll get a shotgun in your face. Like, you don't understand. Like, you're no way. But it happened. I was shocked. I was really shocked. So imagine how many awakenings have happened. Look at, like, Russell Brand, like, a complete awakening from, primarily due to COVID, or Joe Rogan. You can see lots of public examples of people who the COVID experience, awakened them to something, at least seeing another layer of reality, if not a spiritual awakening themselves. So the harder the demiurge or the dark forces or whatever, the ego, tries to reassert control, that pressure leads to the awakening. It's great.
That's God loves a good story, and goodness always
Yeah.
wins. So there's always going to be that plot twist where the evil, the arch nemesis, whatever you want to describe it, thinks it has everything in its grip, and it thinks it
Yeah.
has everything in its clutches. And that's the moment where the hero rises forth, and that hero exists within all of us, which is that Kundalini, that Shakti energy that rises up and says, "Hey, I'm done playing that game. I'm done living in that filth. Let's rise up and let's make this happen." And
Yeah.
what a beautiful expression we're seeing come into that.
It's like exactly like that myth or that archetype is so prevalent. And in India too, they have that story of Ravana, who was like a super yogi, and he had like mystical powers, and he was in Lanka. It was called Lanka back then. And what he does is he steals Ram's wife, Sita, who's the divine feminine. And because he's trying to like control Kundalini for his own egoic desires, and then Hanuman and Lakshmana like rescue Sita. So the divine feminine gets rescued by Hanuman, who's devotion and love, and Lakshmana, who's loyalty. And they liberate the divine feminine from the clutches of the overbearing egoic masculine. So that's such a great Indian story that says the same thing. And then so if you look at those myths through time, even like Jack and the Beanstalk or Sword in the Stone, Kundalini is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like the true king is able, like the one who's humble, the one who's from the poor background, the one who doesn't know he's the king, the one who's just a lad, or in the newest version with Madonna's ex-husband. I forgot the guy's name, but he's just a lad, right? He's a clever lad, and he's the one who pulls the sword from the stone, and that's the Kundalini rising, right? Or like the kid who's so like innocent and gullible. So like a child, he he, he sells. He only gets these magic beans for the family, like with your niete and your stupidity, and then those lead to like growing up to the heavens. Those magic beans. So it's like this simplicity, the spontaneity, the innocence. It always leads back to there. So when you like forget about the external powers, but when you're in your own egoic lockdown, and just coming always back to that curious openness, innocence. In Abood here and in New Age circles, they're big into like bubbles or protections or some kind of like shield. And I understand the reasons why. And if you have if you've been abused or you're very fearful for whatever good reasons, you might have a reason to have like firm boundaries. But they don't say firm boundaries are the way to divinity. They say be like children to enter the kingdom of heaven, and children don't have them. So maybe you need them temporarily, but later you need to If you want to get there, you need to work at dissolving them.
Well, that's the role of the Trinity, and recognizing that the innocence is the most precious commodity in the universe, and that's why that's always attacked as that treasure, because it's the treasure that we guard, but the treasure that we are here to allow to play. So the masculine creates the outer protection, the feminine creates the inner protection, the father protecting the outer walls, the mother protecting the home, and that allows the child to come out and play to the highest expression that it can. So when all of those are in balance and everything is working as it should, then that child is here to play. But we shouldn't forget that we're here to play, and that's where it gets so, people get so caught up in some of these spiritual practices, and the spiritual ego comes out of like, it's got to be serious, and you've got to take this, you've got to be very solemn and somber all the time. It's like, no, we're here to play. We're here to find that joy
The
and
opposite. That,
yes. Yes.
well, it's the opposite. So Ma says, like in the mystical states that I have, she is joy, she is love. I am joy, I am love. All this I see is love. It's not energy. It's love, actual love. The love you feel in your heart, the love you express, the love you share is the love I am. So that's that. If you want to nutshell it down to her philosophy, that's it. And it's like, actually, everything is love. And if you intuit that, feel it sometimes, have it transmitted all the time, start to experience it more and more. So that becomes like, we could say like a supercharged bhakti path. And it's the play, the goddess is playing, it's Leela. So it's a play, it's her play. She is the audience, she is the actor, she is the screenwriter, she is the cinematographer, she is the one watching the movie, she's the screen. Like, she's all aspects, and you have like you're a perspective of that, but you're also the whole. And it's really, and it's playful. And when things start happening to you, like at first there's coincidence, then there's synchronicity, then there's like, oh my God, this is just divinity. It's a whole nother, it's like a supercharged synchronicity. And when you're in that state, or when you come to that point, it's very playful. I'll give you an example. There was it was mind blowing. So I love thriller, spy, not so much like shoot 'em up, bang bang like James Bond, but more like a Cold War spy movie kind of thing. I love it. I just love it. And seen all the best ones. So there was a TV series on Netflix called Le Bureau. It's a French spy series, and it had 5 seasons. Now a 6th season being produced in Tulum. So I started having a mystical experience with the show. So the show, I was watching like season 2 or something, and it was literally speaking to me in the show. And at one point, the spy master is telling his like top agent, you need to take some time off, you're too highly strung. And starts telling him a story about cows. But I know this cow story, it's a Christian story. Krishna was a cow herder, and it comes from that tradition. And why is it in the middle of the spy series? There was nothing else spiritual in the spy series. But this story, it's a Krishna story. Why is the spy master telling that story? So I'm like time dilates. I'm like, what is going on with this Krishna story? And so the spy master tells the spy, take time off in a safe house. Now, a safe house in spy movies is some nondescript, out of the way place where the spies are going to be safe, that no one knows there, etc. But when they show the door of the safe house, it's a red door. So red is the color of Devi, the red is the color of Kali. So after the Krishna story, I say, Jai Krishna. And then they show the red door, and I say, Jai Ma. And next to the door, they have a sign. Now, why should there be a sign on a safe house? It should be nondescript. And that sign says, opossum. Opossum is like a marsupial animal they have in North America. And I had just read the night before about Quetzalcoatl, who's the Mayan god of Kundalini. And his ride, like Ganesha rides a rat or a mouse, Quetzalcoatl rides an opossum. This is a French show. The safe house was in Paris. Why is there a possum that's not a French animal next to the red door after the Christ? I was like, oh my God, I have to shut down the computer and stop watching for like an hour or two. I'm having a heart attack because it's even operating through there. Like the divinity is winking at you. It's playful. It's having a good laugh. Oh, you like the spy series? Okay, we're going to put some twists in here for you that only you will know. Only you will have read Quasicoda last night for 10 pages, you know?
It is. And you can't help but to laugh when these moments happen. And it makes it such a intimate connection because, as you said, it's curated just for you, and so you get to have that intimate connection with your best friend that's guiding you to all these fun adventures. And as long as we
Yes.
and our choice is just to maintain that attitude towards it of just allowing it, as you mentioned, the surrender, to allow it to go, to be in that state of openness, which is what she guides us to be in that state of
Now
reception.
imagine when you're having this beautiful mystical experience like the one I was having with Le Bureau. It's very easy, it's mind blowing, but it's, but now when you're having a super emotional experience, because let's say you're in a fight with your partner or something with your family or something that's really touching your emotions strongly, and you want to change the situation, or you want to get out of the situation, or let's say you use male bypassing techniques like I'll go for a run, I'll that's I used to triathlon to work on my emotions. So no, like this situation and the emotions you're experiencing and the churning of the heart are the perfect medicine for you right now, just like the Le Bureau mystical experience. It's not different. It's all coming from the same place. But one, you're like, oh my God, great. And the other, like, please make it stop. So exactly what you said, can you shift your perspective and realize, especially when you're moving out of ego consciousness, you have the experience of everything is being arranged for you, good and bad, for your awakening, continued awakening. And so you can still be emotional. It's fine. Don't suppress that. It's fine. But can you also keep the perspective while you're going through everything that needs to be felt or even expressed? Like, oh, I can't say that I'm hurt because that wouldn't be spiritual, or like, oh, I'm hurt. It's okay. And allowing that experience to happen, but also keeping the experience that this is the perfect medicine for me right now. So it lets you hold on a little less tightly, and not exactly like you said, not to take anything too seriously. The minute you find yourself like the in Kung Fu Panda, the peacock, like overly serious, spiritual, like whatever, like drop it immediately. You're on the wrong path.
Yeah, it's so true.
If you
And it
can't laugh
is,
at yourself,
yeah, laughter. I mean, laughter, it's humor. So humor has the same root as humility. So this is what
hmm,
keeps us humble and open, because we find this whole experience humorous, and we get to laugh at it, and that dispels any of this pride from coming in and taking this too seriously, or the self-deprecation on the opposite end of that spectrum, that negative spiral that's taking us downward. Either one of those directions is keeping us in an imbalanced state. So how can I come back to that humility? Well, laugh. Laugh at yourself, laugh at the situation, and be okay with stubbing your toe. Be okay with the moment of finding that whatever the pain brought you to, or whatever sort of the experience needed to get you to that moment, because that's stepping in as the alchemist to truly transmutate that experience, to alchemize that from lead into gold, and find the treasure in every bit. And then everything becomes an exciting adventure, no matter where it takes us, and we get to cherish
like
all
when
the
we're
emotions. What's
like when
say
we were a
that again?
kid, like yeah, I got
Yeah,
my bicycle. Like
yeah,
I can just go explore. It's an
yes.
exciting adventure. You don't like, oh, I need to pack everything to make sure you don't bring your water bottle. Like, go on the bike and see what happens. You run into some friends, or you fall down and hurt your knee, or you go to some new place and you get lost. It's all a big adventure. And I think what I observe in the Kundalini waking process is that most people have to go through a lot of the Kundalini laughter and the Kundalini crying. So we are both our crying and our laughter has been suppressed culturally. So it's inappropriate to laugh in the middle of the class when the teacher farts, or like it's or laughing at your father's speech, or just giggling with your friends in the back of the classroom or at church, even worse. So how many times as a child is your innocent joy, not knowing any better, your laughter, your giggling, your joy suppressed. When I was young, I smile. I still smile a lot, but I was people would tease me and even bully me because I was smiling so much. And adults tried to tell me that maybe I have a psychological disorder because like I'm bypassing or whatever. If someone had a psychiatric degree, they would try to lay that trip on me, and I'd be like, yeah, nah, I can't help that natural. And they're like so serious at 4. Their parents have really done a number on them. And so usually during the Kundalini awakening, in a phase, you go through a lot of laughter. You just all that suppressed laughter has to be released energetically and emotionally and spiritually, everything. And they're crying. So there's first like the trauma release crying that maybe if we've been to those kind of like workshops or whatever we've experienced ourselves. But then there's another level, which is like all the suppressed like sadness, not necessarily trauma, but a sadness that big boys don't cry. Stiff upper lip if you're English. I'll give you something to cry about, or shake it off and go back into the game. Like as a boy, you're constantly told to, like it's not appropriate to cry. It's even not appropriate to acknowledge the pain you're having. In fact, you should just push through it and get back in that soccer field. So this kind of thing, like we've went through a lot of suppression in our emotional field, and it all has to be released. So that can happen through crying. And then when you enter the heart chakra, that's when the crying really begins.
Mm.
So when your heart chakra begins to open, you become so sensitive in your heart at certain points that if someone dropped a feather, you might just go into wailing. It's in the Egyptian tradition, they say your heart has to be lighter than the feather when they're weighing you in the days of darkness. So they just scales and exactly an intense vulnerability. Imagine it. So if the feather blows the wrong way, like so that's an incredible vulnerability. That's ego doesn't want to feel that kind of vulnerability. And maybe I only know from being in a male's body, masculine ego, even or someone's gonna. It's not even just someone's gonna take advantage of it. It's like it's not masculine to be vulnerable. It's not masculine to be so sensitive in the heart. It's not. And then once you're through all that and you start feeling like joy for no reason, smiling like a dope, and you start to feel orgasm in the heart. So it's a whole nother topic, but we think of orgasm as particularly genital based. Experience orgasms in every single chakra or along your whole spine or the whole body. Uh, so in my experience, is the best thing ever because the emotions, the vulnerability, and energetic, it's exactly like a contractions, power, heart chakra, with the associated emotions. So it's wow, it's the heartgasm is such a gift of the heart opening that kind of in the ancient traditions you don't hear anything about, but in New Age circles you hear a little bit about, like here in Abu, some people know about that, and it's the best. So that's the other side. Once you're through the crime, the laughter, the vulnerability, etc., comes the orgasmic bliss and joy and
Mm.
love.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it is. It's the celebration of that union between these two seemingly opposite forces, the masculine and the feminine coming together in that sacred sex, which creates the orgasm. So it's that feeling, that sensation, but it's not just once. And as you mentioned, not just limited to the genitals or that traditional sort of sexual act as we've been told, but it's truly that unification of body and mind and spirit, all of it together to create that full connection feeling. And yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, so I wanted to ask just to kind of like bring it back to maybe a little grounded practicality. what would you, and I know this is gonna be different for everyone depending on where people are and what they're looking at and how what you might be inclined towards, but what would you suggest for someone hearing all of this conversation, perhaps for the first time diving into these topics? Where would somebody begin? Where would somebody want to start, or where might somebody be inclined to move towards? Where would you suggest?
Um, so I would look for sources that resonate with you deeply. So if you uh, see this guy who was able to do all these amazing things with his body in the yoga class or the gym, and that's inspiring for you, and you're feeling like, oh, I'd like to learn from that person. I'm someone, maybe I can go on retreat with that person or whatever. That's it, it's your inspiration, you see, or it's like, oh, I'm really interested in Chinese medicine, or I'm really interested in Ayurveda, or I'm really interested in raw foods, or I'm really interested in whatever. And then find the sources that you find are authentic and speak to you in a deeper way than intellectual. And like, it doesn't have to be a full calling yet. You can go through many different books and teachers and whatever before you get to a calling. But at least to like start delving into that realm of it, at least at an informational level, and then also at a human contact level, like finding mentor or mentors who are an authentic, embodied, uh, embodied expression of the thing that you maybe not just like them. There's only one of them, but there's something about them or something about what they're offering that's deeply inspiring. So now that's a general, but I will say that I know that most people do better on a raw and I know some people don't do well. And from my experience, it's usually because they haven't got the mucoid plaque out. So when they're not able to absorb, I could die. Very detoxifying can also be depleting. And it's especially if you don't have that mucoid plaque out. So you might notice imbalances. So I would say start purifying the temple. You can move to.
Oh, looks like we lost him. So I caught the tail end of it, and I'm just going to surmise what he was saying, which makes total sense. And it's often what we talk about, and that purification of the body is an essential first step, oftentimes, to have the capability to even be able to receive that influence. So that's often the first step that anyone should take a look at is like, where is my physical health? How can I cleanse and clear my system? Specifically, starting with the digestive system. So he mentioned the mucoid plaque as being that sort of inverted snake, because we're wanting to activate the divine snake, the twinned serpent within, which is that Kundalini energy. We're wanting to activate her, but in order to get to her, we have to get rid of the black snake, which would be the mucoid plaque, which would be that sort of representation of that dense, death, decaying reality. So starting there to cleanse and clear that pathway so that river is flowing, and that's going to allow that divine energetic river to flow much more effectively.
At all levels, your health, your energy, like we could say, like purifying the temple, preparing for Kundalini awakening, being able to absorb food and nutrients better. So getting the mucoid plaque exists because we've been ingesting things in an incorrect way, and the things we've been ingesting are not. So then it gets like solidified in terms of like mucus and plaque to protect the rest of the body from. Removing the mucoid plaque is like a karmic do-over. Like all that unconsciousness in terms of eating can actually, to a large extent, be undone. It's one of the few things in this world that we get like a karmic do-over. So getting that mucoid plaque out is it starts rejuvenating the system. You don't, even before it's all out, some people have to work very hard. I had to work very hard to have mine. It's not all out yet. I've been on a year's journey with it, but went from very congested to almost all out. It's taken many years. So, but even over those years, like as you start to absorb things better, as you start getting energy better, you can still have an awakening with nuclear plaque. Like it's just a question of, that health is what you said, the health. So the health to have this, like in Kundalini awakening, it's in and through the body. So if you have health impediment, it's going to impede, there's a good chance it will impede your awakening. Grace can do whatever it wants. But if you don't have good function at whatever level and you're deteriorating, the Kundalini works through Kriyas, right? So if your arm doesn't go there because you have a block, and that's where the energy wants to put it. You've got to start working on dissolving where you feel that block, whether it's through massage or fasting or whatever. So I had to do that all over my body. And it's just like a layer, where it's like this thing in my neck, this thing in my back. It's just purifying the body again and again and again. So the mucoid plaque is like super important. But it's all the blockages that we could start there, but also emotionally and mentally cling to. So just to see where our patterns are, can we move to a space of loving neutrality? Like, this person's Democrat, this person's a Republican, this person is whatever, this person's coming from this culture, from their perspective, given their upbringing, given their milieu, given everything, that's what they believe. They couldn't be anyone different than what they are. How can they be condemned? Like if you grew up in that society with those parents, you'd be thinking the same thing. So it's just to say, like, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be cool with people being super hateful and aggressive while I'm in the space with them. Obviously not. I will leave. You don't say, oh, we're all one as an elephant's charging at you. You use your discernment, but nevertheless, to see internally, can you be in this loving acceptance, loving neutrality towards everything, but still taking appropriate discernment? So where are the blocks in your intestines? Where are the blocks in your heart? Where are the blocks in your mind? And just the patterning. So even back in my early days, I would always take a different path to work. I'd walk to work every day, and I'd always find a new way. Like in Soho in England, in London, there are all these windy little streets and everything. So I'd always find a new way to walk through Soho, or a new way to walk Hyde Park, or something like that, because of the patterning. I've never walked on this before. How did I wind up Scooterville? But I'm always trying to find routes, new ways to walk and get lost, etc. So it's persistently opening yourself up through the release of patterning at all levels. Yeah, that's where I'd say to start. And it could be that you can't do raw food at the moment because you live in an intemperate climate. And so the best you're going to do is paleo. Okay, well, that's still better than eating, 90% of the stuff. So it's all fine. And I was at one point doing that too. And it has its purpose and does its thing. And later you might be inspired to move to the tropics, and and you can do something different, or Southern California, where you might have, or Florida, where you have access to other things that are fresh. So you can see the Chinese aren't out of their mind for their diet. Given where they are, given their temperature, what grows in the land, the Balinese have their diet. All the cultural diets make sense because that's what the humans have adapted to. But it doesn't mean that it's also the one that will bring us to the higher states of divinity in the body. It can be a good baseline to start, but in my experience, the more natural, the more unprocessed, the more unadulterated, the more living the food is, you can actually start to feel the prana in the food. Prana and Kundalini are one and the same. We could say that it's like Siamese sisters. So if you're in a very high pranic state, a Kundalini awakening has more potential. If you're Kundalini awakening and your prana is quite low, the Kundalini itself will try to up your prana. And the more food the prana has, the more living, the more vibrant, the more fresh, the more natural, the more recent, the more prana it has, the more it will serve your awakening and your health.
beautifully said. And I love how you preface that with just this um, continued placing ownership and responsibility on each of us individuals to find that path. And that's what we're saying here, is to be in that space of openness and receiving of wherever you are guided to. So if you are able to, and your focus is purely on the physical health, then pursue that. But if you have perhaps a mental or emotional blockage to even going into that route, then that might be the route that you need to pursue first. And it's something that happens in tandem. It's she's movement, so we're always moving, we're flowing. Stagnation is death. So we're supposed to find the stagnation points, and she guides us to them. Whenever she hits a stagnant point, then she's like, oh, I can't move at this point. So that's where our attention, our focus should be narrow and point to and address that however we need to, and then allow her to keep flowing so that we do get to keep expanding.
That is so beautifully said. So the way that manifests, the way I've experienced it is, so my life 24/7 is working on that. Like that's what I do. Like I want to feel more grace. I want to serve grace more. I want to help other people with their grace. So I still feel blocks. I still have patterns. Like I'm constantly directed towards addressing those in whatever way I seem to do. So later on, because Shakti is in the background, it's going on 24/7. When Kundalini enters Sushumna, it's a 24/7 experience. It's not a Kundalini experience, it's a Kundalini awakening. It's awake. It's not going back to bed. It doesn't come and go. It's present all the time. Mantras start flying out of my mouth. Like if I turn over in bed, I say Jema. Like mantras are happening in my field and in my body while I'm sleeping. Like it's working on me 24/7 without any doership whatsoever, just grace working on me. And it's comical, like what goes on. You should see in my house. Maybe one day we'll hang out together and you can see. But one day there's something that was so triggering for you, like, and you try to go there into that trigger and you feel nothing. In fact, all you feel is joy. But you didn't go to a trauma workshop. You didn't like work on it in any way. It just manifested and the release happened without you even realizing it. And now the experience has happened where this trigger arose and you just laugh. I feel nothing. I feel nothing but joy. It doesn't bother me at all. In fact, this person who I was like, oh, them, they're so bad. You know, I don't know. Actually, let's give them a hug. I don't know if they'd accept a hug. Well, we'll see what happens with that. But like, Jema. So it's just awesome. Then you realize like that this, how many trauma release workshops could you go to? And that may never happen. And in fact, focusing on trauma too much might, like I want in New York, everyone, but there was a time it seemed like everyone on the Upper West Side had their own psychiatrist, like an analyst, psychotherapy, like Freudian psychoanalyst or Jungian psychoanalyst. So I checked it out myself. And after 6 months, I was telling this analyst, like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just focusing more on what's a problem and sharing my problems with you 3 times a week. And I'm excessively focused on problems, and I've got more problems than I ever had before. Can you point to anything that we've had in 6 months that's changed in my life for the positive? And she said, no. And I said, okay, this is our last session.
Oh, it is. It becomes a fixation, you know, and the ego loves to find that sort of the past to focus on, and the trauma as like this root, this weight to just keep us secretly, you know, kind of sneakily stuck in a certain vibratory level. We're stuck in that stagnation. So the ego is going to find these routes where it might seem like this is a path out, but actually it's a dead end cul-de-sac just to keep you rooted in that same layer, because that's where the ego feels safe. That's where we feel with it finds its space to stay and grow into that death and dormancy. Whereas we need to be continually open to the movement, continually open to the flow, and just allow it to take us where it needs to. Yeah, beautifully said.
So in asking before about the flow, so that's just you know, being really attuned to the flow is another way to approach this whole thing. So I say the loving Tao. It's not like the void Tao or impersonal Tao. Actually, the Tao Te Ching, they say was written in the feminine perspective in the beginning, but the patriarchy got a hold of it and changed some stuff. So initially the Tao was feminine. It was acknowledged as a feminine, of course. So it's like being in the flow. It's very difficult to be in the flow. It's as long as you have an ego and it has preferences and you know, you have strong desires and then you can also get very obsessive into like my flow, which turns into the shadow of the flow, which is like super egoic. Like, oh yeah, I blew you off and I didn't call you for like 3 days because in my flow, even though you were waiting for me 3 days ago, I might have been worried something happened to me. Or that's narcissism. Approach flow and deep listening, or what the actual movement of grace is. That's another way of inviting more grace into your life. And so, right, like trying to live intuitively, it's the same kind of thing. Trying to live in the flow. You know, the more you purify the body, purify the temple, the more sensitive your intuition gets. The more sensitive your own flow and therefore external flow.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So I was curious because I know, and we were talking about this before we got on the call, and it'd be good to address it. So just with people's concerns around the terminology of Kundalini awakening and how that can somehow be, you know, because you even mentioned having an experience with training where you felt something uncomfortable, you felt something was perhaps not right. So how can one, as they're pursuing and learning to step into that flow and allowing this to guide them wherever it takes them, how can we have our preparations for potentially the pitfalls of falling into something where it might, you know, activate something that's not ready to be, or maybe we could just get into that a little bit more deeply to alleviate concerns that people might have.
So in my experience, it's the overly willful practice pushing that leads to the worst outcomes. So I've heard many stories from friends about their intense yogic practice that led to negative outcomes because the school itself kind of tells you just push through. I think as long as your Kundalini is not awake, actually, it's much safer to do those things. But once your Kundalini wakes up, drop all practices and listen to the Kundalini, what it wants to do. Like in a way, like the practice was a preparatory phase for you. And now that the Kundalini has been awakened, maybe just through your desire of it, focus of it, irrespective of the practice you were doing, but maybe the practice, some aspect, you know, it's all a big soup. So once the Kundalini wakes up, you can still do your practice, but the Kundalini wants you to do your practice. Even though it served you up to this moment, is it serving you today? Is it serving you now? Or are you using that prior willpower? You know, so it served you up to this moment, but it may not serve you tomorrow. And you're constantly listening to your body and how it feels in your body and your intuition. So, you know, before I was so excited to go to the class. Now I don't want to go. That's the first sign. How come? That used to be your favorite thing to do, was go to this thing. Or like I shared with your mushroom experience, like I felt dark and heavy and like I never want to do this again. So why, you know, drop it immediately? Or I'll have a certain food like, you know, oh, this was really serving me well. And then one day it's just like the taste is just terrible. It could be my last time ever having it, or it could be okay tomorrow again. So I'm always interested in the feedback of my body and my intuition and my energy system. So even I can go to, let's say, a kirtan. I love kirtan. I'm a bhakta. So I can enter amazing, loving states in a good kirtan. So I went to a new kirtan and I was so excited. So I got there early and I sat in the front row to get the full, like being in front of the speaker at the rave or in front of the DJ booth. That's the way it was for kirtan. And I didn't vibe with the artists at all. It was like I didn't feel grace here, but it's mantras, but it's kirtan. You love kirtan. Look, everyone else having a good time. Plus, I'm in the front row, and the guy who invited me is the lead singer. And if I leave, it's going to be right in front of his face, and I feel that's rude, and it wouldn't be a nice thing to do. So I'm just going to tough it out. So literally, people are screaming and dancing and jumping and having a great time. My kidneys are on fire; they're burning because I won't leave the room. And I'm just thinking, oh, let this be over soon and whatever. Just energetically, it was horrible, it was so much pain. And I thought, oh, maybe it's some glare, or maybe it's some triggering, or maybe the mantra. No, because the minute I left there, I started feeling better. And then I started like 20 minutes later, back to normal. Now I realized, like sometimes they'll tell you, like in the New Age school, that's your trigger, just push through, you know? And then I realized, like, this doesn't make me feel good. That's what I'm going to honor. I'm not pushing through anything. Like I did that in the past. I did triathlon. I'm used to pushing through. Now I'm going to honor how I feel. So if I enter a new space, new people, even a tea ceremony or a sauna or something, I sit by the door and I just feel how I feel in here. I love sauna, but it doesn't mean I'm going to like this sauna today with these people in this location. And the minute I feel tight, contracted, uneasy, and there's a difference between uneasy, like a good mystical uneasy, and uneasy, energetically uneasy. You need to leave here, and you get to learn through your experience what that is. And I feel like that's the number one thing to honor. And we weren't allowed to honor that in our, 3 o'clock time for class, 5 o'clock time for dinner. You have to eat with these people, play nice with them. They'll play with those people. I don't want to play with them. No, you play with them. I don't want to go to Joey's house. You're going to Joey's house. Like so much time we had maybe an energetic thing, or like a weird aunt we didn't want to be with, or the dog who was always unfriendly to us, but we have to soldier through. And all that's going to be unspooled. It's all going to be unspooled. So our energy gets freed up, free energy. And if we're doing it to ourselves now as a conscious adults, it's just perpetuating those things. So listen to your body, listen to your heart, listen to your energy all the time. And that's the basis of the whole path anyway, because it's like your choice with the food. I want to introduce one more thing that really works. A pendulum. So, I used to use one years ago, and I started using one recently again, because I realized it's so amazing. Because here I've been doing this yoga of intuition, but I still know I have preferences and projections and so forth, and that can be disguised as enthusiasm. I'm prone to enthusiasm, as you might have noticed. So I double check myself when I need to with the pendulum. So the pendulum, in my experience, always around my heart, it's in the shape of a heart. Is that really intuition, or is it just something else, less than divine intuition? And then the pendulum will say there, if I override the pendulum only occasionally, the outcomes are always horrible. Like it becomes clear why the pendulum was saying. So when I feel like I need to, I double check it by dowsing, and I find that that's an incredible way. When the dowser, like I might say something like, should Tim water fast next week? 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 Now, it's cheating because the dowser always wants me to water fast. But it'll start going like a helicopter. So it doesn't mean I have to water fast next week, although I think I am. You see what I'm saying? So that's the way to always kind of check if you're unsure or unsteady. And you might think it's like a crutch, or I'll be immobilized, checking all the time. No, you still use intuition, you still use everything, but the ones where you're a little like, it's a tricky one. Should I do this call with Justin today?
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. And I haven't used the pendulum, but I will often use muscle testing, which is another way of just sort of giving another mechanism to kind of just have that extra, yeah, while we need it for the time until that intuition is sharp, or our relationship with intuition is sharpened, then it's good to use these tools for what they are
Also
and what they
strengthens
can
it.
be helpful for. Yes,
So
and
if
it
we have the
strengthens them as
intuition,
well.
like intuition that I should fast, and then uh, uh, you confirm it with the dowser, then you know, like, oh, that's my intuition that was telling me that. So in a way, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a crutch, but it's a great one because it strengthens your intuition and shows you what's a false intuition, what's a real intuition.
Right. Yeah, and I would just say in this exploration process, be open, be willing to make mistakes, which there are no mistakes, but be open to like learning through the trial and error process. And there again, there's no mistakes, there's no errors, because everything is just helping to sharpen and hone in that ability to truly receive that divine inspiration every which way. So whereas the ego is going to want to sit in that complacency and say, I'm not going to make any decision whatsoever, I'm just going to sit here and be afraid to step any which direction because I don't want to make a wrong step. And that's where we get lost in that death spiral. So take the step, take the leap of faith. It's okay if we stumble, it's okay if we fall, just get back
Of
up
course.
again and learn from it. It's beautiful in that sense.
Well, it's also, so we said like trusting intuition, also not to be too serious. And the other that goes with that is linearity. So, we want to cultivate non-linearity, spontaneity, and this kind of feeling of like eureka, download, thinking outside the box, not even seeing a box, the box is gone, so to be in this state. So we have like an idea and we think, oh, that's a crazy idea, or, no, that's where we suddenly perk up and like, that's an odd idea to have, or that's an odd inspiration. Where'd that come from? What's that about? Like to be curious about that. And so we can say, like they have the story of the Zen master where um, the student like takes the sandals and puts them on his head and walks outside the door. And the Zen master says now he's enlightened, like it's because like he's just done something totally bizarre and solely nonsensical. And especially for those like Japanese society or whatever, it's like really crazy to do something like that. So the more we can, uh, yeah, cultivate the nonlinearity. So one thing happened to me is being 7 years raw foodist at the time, and mostly on fruits, but still with a lot of mucoid plaque. I suddenly got the intuition to go out for sake. I hadn't had alcohol like in 10 years, and I had some liver issues. So I was like, sake seems really joyous. So my partner and I went out for sake, and I'm like, okay, it was clear. And the minute that sake hit my lips, I'm not even talking about the high quality sake, like medium quality sake. I went into like a lower samadhi state. Like thoughts just crawled. My head went back, breath stopped. So there's kumbhak when your breath stops automatically. That's like the entrance to samadhi for most people because their prana becomes so high in the body that the breathing is happening at a mystical energetic level rather than your breathing apparatus. So it can happen on the in-breath or out-breath where the breath stops. It's not like like a pranayama where you build it. It just happens. And then the head goes back and the mind goes quiescent to some degree, either all the way, that's like a super samadhi, or quiescent, which is just like ripples of thoughts. So at the first tip of the sake, like, dunk, wow. And like Ma, I was just afterwards, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, Ma sent me out for sake so I could be in samadhi. And like, also, if you look at there I was, alcohol, it's poison. And of course, sake is made in the Shinto temple. It's part of like the ancient Japanese religion and mysticism. It's not just like sake, like having a dosekis. Sake is also like an incredible mystical tool in the ancient tradition. But in me and my ignorance and my opinion was like against it. And thank God I saw the nonlinear, I'm gonna like the mushroom, taking the mushroom after 88 days juice fasting. Who would be so stupid? But no, that's what has to be done here.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, truly just being open to wherever she leads. And yeah, I mean, alcohol can be a form of medicine. And so in that sense, anything can be a form of medicine for her to bring us to lead us to some layer of activation.
Not
Yeah,
everything
thank you.
can be, everything is.
Yeah.
So if you, like we were saying before, like everything you're experiencing is the perfect medicine for you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Through it all, no matter what it appears or how we judge it or what our opinions are about it, it's the perfect,
Yeah.
we're going through exactly what we need to in each and every moment. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, my brother, I think I haven't seen any
Well,
questions pop into the chat. This has been an absolutely beautiful discussion, and I know I know that we are going to continue these discussions, but I do think it feels right to sort of start winding down to a close with this one. So I just wanted to pass it over to you and see if you have any closing comments or words to leave us today, and just again extend gratitude for all the time you've shared.
it feels like a little like transmission wants to come through. So I'll just leave like a little space and see what wants to happen. Om Jema. Om. Om Jema. Om. 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 I am love. I am love. Thank you so much, Justin. I really like enjoyed our talk, and when we first made contact, I just saw so much like a kindred spirit in terms of like all the things you explore and share. And I was like, oh, that'd be a good talk with him, and it was great. I felt so much, yeah, so much joy sharing with one another and exploring together. I want to really deeply thank you for
Likewise, my
this
friend.
this session and this opportunity.
Yes, likewise, my brother. It's been a joy connecting, and I'm looking forward to so much more. So thank you for all that you've shared, and yeah, let's keep on going. So yeah, just appreciate you, and thank you everyone for tuning in tonight and on the live stream. And oh, here's Lila, who just shared that she'd love to share that she had an amazing, powerful session that definitely was feminine in nature. We'll tell about it sometime. Thanks for the discussion today. Yeah, so Lila and I both were gifted a beautiful meditation session with Kamananda, and it was wonderful. It
Oh,
was so wonderful. So yeah, we'll have more
well,
talks about that for sure. And yes, thank you, brother. Really appreciate you. And
I'm gonna say like if something comes up from this, like actually the whole thing is a transmission anyway, right? So it can be that someone had like either an inspiration, a question, or an experience that just from listening to this conversation. And so if that happens and you feel like you want to write me or write Justin to write me or whatever, I'm here for that. So you can always contact me if you do.
yeah, is there a preferred way to reach out to you directly, just so it can be recorded on the live stream?
On Instagram is probably the best way.
On Instagram. So you can find the link to his Instagram in the comments or in the description of the video. And that's how you can send a message to him if you'd like to get him there. If you can't find him there, just feel free to contact me any which way, and I can definitely get you connected. So yeah, appreciate you, brother. Sending lots of love to you and sending love to everyone in the chat. Thank you all. And I hope you have a wonderful, yeah, hope you have a wonderful night or day wherever you are. Until next time. Bye, everyone.